All right, well, thank you all for being here. We just wanted to talk about some of the ways that we get around Omaha in the winter and the ways that like some of the products that we use or tips that we've figured out over time, whether it's lighting or whether it's just making yourself more visible, all the way down to like how do you deal with heavy snows and icy streets. I just gathered the things around my house that I use because again I'm a year-round cyclist. Between my wife and I and two kids, we only have one car, so I'm often riding kids to school, and it's worked out. But there are some challenges to it. So the first thing that I was talking with Sarah about beforehand is visibility. And I have this really cool jacket from a group out of Chicago named Bike Lane Uprising. They've sewn their patch onto it, Bike Lane Uprising. And they do a lot of things around, like they have an app that you can use to show when people are parked in the bike lane. But this jacket is entirely made of like reflective material. So if it's just you on a dark street and the headlight shines on you, you look like a flash bulb. You are very visible. So part of it is when you're biking and it gets dark earlier, making sure that you're visible. And obviously we've all worn high vis and things like that before, but that's something that I found to be extra useful in the sort of dark winter months, especially in those couple of weeks right after daylight savings switches back to standard time and it's dark when people don't expect it to be dark, but you're still riding because this is when you get off of work as well. And then I got into other things and I saw it on Rick's profile picture, but one of the things that has been a lifesaver for me are these buffs, the neck scarf thing. I've got a bunch of them, again, things that you for lighter weight, and then I've got the wool one as well. I saw the studies that say don't use these as COVID masks because they actually diffuse things in a worse way for COVID spread, but they definitely help with keeping your neck and upper face warm when you're riding and it's cold out. So that's another thing that I use. And then Sarah and I were talking about this again, is the bar mitts. So if you have the full-on bar mitts, these things just like live on your bike, I guess in this configuration, and your hands just go right in them. These are nice, but I actually found that I didn't like using them all that well. I took them off my bike and went instead for just better gloves. And so the gloves that I like, I've got a lightweight pair. They are from Showers Pass is the brand that I like, but they're waterproof and they're nice like neoprene things that keep your hands warm. And if it's raining or if it's snowing, they seem to work really well there too. And then Ponderosa Cycling has these they call garbage mitts that are basically my as cold as it gets, I'm fine in these gloves. They're just rubber mittens that work, I think, better than the bar mitts in terms of bar mitts are always on your bike and that's nice, but these are more versatile, especially if you use different bikes or if you have different contexts. So I really like these. And then headwear, I think, is the last. And so one of the things is with a helmet on, like a ear flap or an ear warmer is nice. But then I did buy the Walls cap version that goes over your ears so that you can fit it under your helmet but still have it cover your ears, and I found that to be pretty effective as well. So those are really my main winter things. And then I guess the last one that I don't have near enough, I do, it's right here, are nice like boots, but like these are just waterproof like snowshoes that I'll use if it's like I'll shovel the driveway when I wear these, and I bike in these, and then I have a set of shoes that I just leave at work so that I can change into better shoes when I'm at work. And then what else was I was gonna say the last things that I think are really important on a bike in the winter are mud guards. And so there's different mud guards, like these are ones that'll just attach to your frame and are sort of like go on, go off for fatter tire bikes. But I think that having some sort of fender situation is super useful on a bike in the winter. And then I do have a pair of studded tires that I found really useful on ice. So I've had fat tire bikes and I have a fat tire bike, but even on a fat tire bike, I lose traction when you hit ice. And on studded tires, I've never felt like I was just about to completely 180 the way that I have on fat tire bikes. So those are some of the things that I've used in the winter. And then I have like a pair of flannel lined khaki pants that I just wear all the time in the winter because I basically just like live like an igloo dress. I mean, I'm just like always bundled. So I wear pants that are very warm and work when I'm at work. But those are my things that I use. What do y'all do? I feel like I just talked a lot. Okay.
I'll jump in since nobody else is.
Thank you, Sarah.
Big plus one on the buff. Like, I really think that's my favorite thing. It's a wool tube. You can double it up. Yeah, goggles. Okay, goggles.
These are what I gave when I was riding my kid to school when he was 4. I had a snowboard helmet for him with snow goggles, like ski goggles, so that we would ride, and he would be all sorts of bundled.
Yep. I think like one thing that I would just kind of add is cold is one thing, and then like active snow is another. So like layering, I think is worth talking about. The less cotton, the better. I'm a big fan of like a merino wool base layer. You can also wear a hoodie or whatever, like go to the thrift store, find some old wool sweater. I think honestly, loft, like a nice kind of warm layer, and then a windbreaker. Like Derek showed that one really awesome reflective piece. You can really kind of wear whatever, I think that as long as you have something that's insulation and something that's wind breaking, you're going to be in good shape there. Goggles are awesome when it's super cold, because I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but your eyelashes will freeze together when it's so cold. If your eyes tear up a little bit and then your eyelashes freeze. Not pleasant. Goggles will solve that problem. And then I got these giant mitts for like $15 from Menards. They're awesome because they go, oh my gosh, I already have a liner pair inside them, because for really cold days, you can like double up. But what I like is there's no awkward gap between your sleeve of your jacket. It goes inside, and this goes over, so that it's just, I don't know. That's, to me, a long portion by your wrist. I'm like, what is this part called? Your wrist. Cover that up. That's also what I like about the buff, is because you can buckle your helmet over the buff, and then you're just really cozy and warm. Stealth when you need to be. I also have bar mitts, and I kind of agree with Derek. I like them for some applications, but when you're like signaling, on the road, it's kind of sometimes awkward to get in and out of them quickly. So just something to be aware of. But I'm a big fan of just layering up a liner glove and then like a big mitten, not a glove, because when your fingers are together, they're warmer. So I think that those are a couple of important things. And then you really don't need anything super fancy. I mean, I obviously used to have a shop, and people would always be like, oh my gosh, you ride year round. And yes, you could buy a bunch of fancy, expensive stuff, but it's also like, have you ever been sledding? Have you ever been snowboarding? Just like use the gear that you already are using to go play outside. And as long as you've got insulation and windbreak, and then I run lights almost any time of day. This time of year, I just feel like, I don't know, gets so dark so early that visibility is crucial. And then another big plus one on studded tires. I had a pretty bad wipeout, I don't know, like a decade ago before I got into studded tires, and have not since. So I really think that studded tires for the icy conditions make a huge difference. In the snow, they don't really do much for you, but when it is, the good old freeze thaw situation that we have here, they make a huge difference on the ice. I guess the other thing that we used to sell some of that people would ask for a lot at the shop is those little like chemical heat warmers. You can put them either in the toes of your shoes or in your mittens, which help a lot. Another thing, as far as footwear goes, I also just wear a big boot and ride platforms. And I mean, I ride platforms year round, but for like the on and off quickness and ability to, I don't know, I think platforms are good. And don't get too small of a boot, because I think, again, loft, making sure that you can wear a thick sock without making your toes suffocate is a good thing. I just saw a hack that someone else was posting about wrapping tinfoil around your sock before you put it in your boot. I have not tried that. I was just thinking that maybe some others of you have like weird hacks that we haven't heard of. I feel like anytime we do one of these, we all learn something new. So I will stop talking now and hope someone else has a tip.
So I have two questions, and then I can wait. I like these claw gloves, and I actually do put hand warmers in here because once I got that hand warmer in here, it goes to my fingers. And then several years ago, I got this Carhartt hat at like, I mean, it's just like a Carhartt hat. It's not even for biking, I don't think, but it fits over like this. So it also covers ears, but I can't hear when I have it on. And then for pants, I usually put on a pair of leggings and then a pair of blue jeans that stretch. So anyway, that's what I do. But I had trouble. I actually went out today, and so I had trouble today. You know, the sun wasn't out quite enough, and I usually have this temp. I have like clothes I wear for each temperature range. And today I just did not hit the mark. My upper body got kind of sweaty and I got really chilled. I didn't have gloves on. I will always even put thin gloves in, but it was only supposed to be, I was supposed to get up to 60. I think it was only like 58. And so I ended up really chilly. So what do you recommend? I had a light wool, merino wool shirt on, and then this jacket, and then a windbreaker. And I'm not kidding you, I got sweaty, and then but yet if I took off anything, I was cold. So what do you recommend for that kind of in between weather? And then I have a question about e-bikes.
I mean,
Hey, and I can jump in because I was on my bike today, if that's okay. Cindy, I had a wool merino t-shirt on as my base layer, and then just a very thin kind of a pretty synthetic long sleeve thing, and then with a jacket over that I bought at Sarah's shop that is really good for like wind breaking, that also has like zippered vents under the arms. So if I like when I'm riding home in the afternoon, it's often warmer than when I go in the morning. So I can pull those open, and just like having that airflow really helps. I sometimes like to still have that jacket on even in the afternoon for the wind breaking part of it. But this jacket that I have, I should maybe go grab it. It's not like that. It's not plastic that, like the vibrant screaming yellow one that I have that's waterproof, but it really has a nice wind breaking element to it. So and then for below the waist, I just had on like runners leggings that are, I don't know, they're supposed to be like warm, but they're not wool. I don't know what they're made out of, honestly. When it gets really cold, I wear wool tights and then pants over that, or flannel jeans. And then I just had wool socks and nothing special shoes today.
I think this time of year is so hard to know because your body is like, oh wait, it's 70 tomorrow. It was just 25. I think that it's really just a tricky time of year to kind of regulate your temperature and figure out like what works. But I like the fact, I mean, I sold Lori the jacket, so of course I like the jacket, but pit zips, like if you do have a cycling specific jacket that has pit zips, that's a huge, that's awesome, because then you can kind of regulate and layer on and off. I also sometimes like a vest like that I'm actually wearing right now, just to kind of add an extra layer there. But again, zipping up and down, I think as you go is helpful. That's why I guess with what you had, Cindy, just trying to like zip it up and down to allow a little airflow, because well, like you mentioned, once you get sweaty, you're kind of done because then you're cold. So I think a tip that I heard a long time ago is make sure that you feel a little cool when you start off. And then the other thing, this maybe is a segue to your e-bike question, but like that's another thing that's tough, because when you're riding an e-bike, obviously you don't use as much energy as you do when you're riding an analog bike. So that's just a whole nother fun element. but trial and error and layers with zippers, I guess is the short answer.
I don't know if you had more to your e-bike question, but like I think that the winter is when I really like having an e-bike, is because I feel like it's hard already, and you're doing what most people are not doing already. And so that little bit of assist, that little bit of, you're not like in charge of every element, especially if it's snowy or icy or in any way, sort of like just that little extra. I'm a big e-bike in the winter fan. I'm not speaking for like how the battery handles in the winter or anything like that, but I really like having an e-bike in the winter.
So my e-bike question actually has to do more about where the hub is or where the motor placement is. So the e-bike I have right now, and I've had a really severe accident on ice. I was going down underneath of the Pacific Street Bridge, and all of the bridges were clear, got to that one, and for some reason the bridge had shadowed an area that was up higher than I would have imagined. And I thought it was just like frost, and usually if it's frost I kind of pop up my speed a little bit so I can go through without slowing down too much and getting slippery. Well, I hit it and it was rutted ice. And so my bike went flying. I flew back and, broke my helmet, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm kind of like, and I do like my e-bike in the winter too, but so if I have a mid hub, both of my tires are operating pretty much at the same thing. So I'm thinking about like, if I end up getting, because I want to get a step through bike, and if I have something that has a rear hub, it's going to be making the rear wheel go more. If I get a front hub, then it pulls you more. And so I'm kind of looking at if it is icy or slippery. Underneath most bridges it is in the wintertime. So what is your advice as far as like having a rear hub where the rear tires, because to me that would make it like, if it's really slick, it might spin, especially if you didn't have studded snow tires. Do you understand what I'm kind of asking?
As far as handling, which is the better handling bike in the winter? Yeah, I have ridden front hub power e-bikes, rear hub power e-bikes, and I currently ride a mid-drive. I actually am going to be electrifying my big dummy excitedly. And so that's going to be a mid-drive with a throttle. So that's another type that I haven't really ridden yet, is mid-drive with a throttle and not just pedal assist. I guess my experience, I have not ridden all of those in the snow though. I just like the mid-drive because to me it feels like the most natural style of e-bike, where like you really can kind of I don't know. Yeah, I guess what you were saying with throttling a rear in the winter, I feel like that would be real sketchy. But I think like with anything, it's going to just take some getting used to. And then yes, I can't tell you, I love studded tires. They change your confidence just changes so drastically when you're on studded tires, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the studded tires. I think a lot of e-bikes, it's less about where the power is coming from and more how it balances. I do feel like front is weird because it's just a different sensation of being pulled rather than like when you're pedaling, the rear tire is the thing pushing you. And that's true for rear hubs and mid-drive hubs or mid-drive motors. But the thing that I've seen that I don't like is when there's the battery pack on the rack at the back, because then the battery is so high on the bike that I think that it changes. It's like if you have a big heavy load on your saddlebags, it just changes where the center of gravity is. And I think in the ice, I don't feel like I know this certainly, but I feel like you want to keep that lower, and the mid-drive does as good a job as any on those. It's just then like, where's your battery pack? Because that's a big heavy additional piece. And I think on your current bike, it's pretty central, right? It's like on the down tube or so. So I mean, that's where I see most of them being placed. And I think that's probably the thing I would avoid, is the one that's on the rack.
Are studded tires a pain when you're not? Oh, sorry. Somebody just started talking. Or am I hallucinating? Are studded tires a pain when it's not actually icy or snowy?
They're loud. They definitely make noise when you're driving on it. the only issue I've ever had is when it was dry and I was coming around the peanut in Benson, and I, because you just like are constantly flipping sides, and I hit a manhole with my back tire and it slid and I fell. But that's the only time I've ever had trouble on studs. I mean, that's the only time I've fallen on studs, and I ride through ice. So it was dry and I hit metal on the side of my studs.
Do you feel like it
it's
makes them any harder to just like to pedal to ride when it's not icy, or is it pretty
There's
much
probably there's some friction added, but I don't know that I put this on my e-bike, so I'm already like at an advantage.
That's fair. Do you like
But
change back to your regular tires on days that it's not icy, or do you leave them on all winter?
it's enough of a pain that it's a once a season change. So once it gets icy, I put the studs on and I leave that. And if there's a nice day, I switch bikes rather than switch the tires. And so I mean I basically say you're my winter bike now. And in fact, I know the picture that Sarah put for the thing on Facebook is like the old bike that she had that was just like old mountain bike converted to just be my junker winter bike. And that's a good way to go if you have the option, because the other thing that we haven't talked about is the damage that all of the brine and salt and things that you come across on the trails and on the roads will do, especially to a steel bike, but also to the components on your bike. Like your chain will rust really quickly, and other metal components if you're not sort of careful. I mean, it means that you gotta wipe things down when you get home sometimes, especially if you've ridden through a lot of briny, slushy, icy stuff that is just going to rust your chain more quickly. And I kind of always, I wouldn't ever change a chain going into the winter. I'd always change it coming out of the winter in the spring, is when I think about like changing those sort of consumable components on my bike.
Yep. The other thing I can tell you, as far as, yes, that old rust bucket 3-speed Bianchi Grizzly that I have, that's my winter bike. Every year I tell myself, okay, at the end of the year, you're going to like clean it off. It's going to be a great idea. And I never freaking do it. And so I usually like, yeah, if you remember to do it, just if nothing else, clean and lube your chain, because it will just turn into like a solid piece of rust, as I've done before. But that just brings me to that point, like lubrication on your chain more often in the winter is a good idea. Maybe in the regular riding season, you do some chain maintenance every couple months or something, make it a little bit more regular. Of course, it depends on how often you're riding, but just wipe it off, re-lube it sort of frequently. And there's different types of lube. There's like wet lube, dry lube, wet, there's a lot of different ones. Everyone has their own, feelings about lubrication when it comes to chains, but just whatever your choice is, make sure that you are doing it more often than you would in other seasons. The other thing I wanted to say quickly about tires, Melinda, is tire pressure is also a good thing to kind of play with when it comes to riding in different types of conditions. So some studded tires, depending on what amount of pressure you have in them, will either flatten out so that more of it is touching and the studs might be on the edge. So if it's like a nice day, just up the pressure, and then you might run just on the center a little bit more, which might not have as many studs. Again, it depends on the type of tire. There's a lot of different stud counts and configurations. We would sell a lot of the carbide tipped steel studs. They're not cheap, but they'll last you several seasons. And yeah, you might lose a stud or two if you're riding it on the cement, but the rubber will actually wear out before the studs do. So don't worry about like wearing them out too quickly or anything like that. I think the main thing is, just manhole covers. But regardless, if you ride studded or not, you can kind of play with the tire pressure. There's always a range. It's usually on the side of your tire, but play with that. That really helps a lot when it comes to traction.
But just so I know, you were saying lower tire pressure when it is icy and higher tire pressure when it's not.
Yeah, and it also depends on the type of tire. I know some people who, if you don't have like a very tready tire, you run a higher pressure, it just cuts through the snow. But again, if we're talking about ice, I think that when you have a little bit less pressure and more contact with the road, it gives you a little bit better. But I'll just keep saying studded tires when it comes to ice. Snow's different, but ice, I really don't think much helps the way that a studded tire does.
No, I'll always talk about the time that I had my fat tire bike, and I was going to the first day of a new teaching class at UNO, and I hit a patch of ice in Elmwood Park. I did a full 360 before I was ejected. I like caught myself, but like bent way up, and then I had to go teach a class, and I like couldn't point because my arm was so sore. It was a whole thing. So yeah, that's definitely something that I would recommend, studded tires over even a fat tire bike. And a fat tire bike is very fun in light powdery snow. Like snow that is tricky to get around in a car is fun on a fat tire bike. And I have a fat tire bike. I like using it, but it is not as reliable as having studded tires on. And these, like the studded tires I have, they're like 2.4-inch tires or 2. It's not some ridiculously wide tire. I don't know. I bought them when Sarah went out of business, which is always the best time to buy things, but then you forget what they are and she's not around to explain everything to you. But that's, like that tire has made it through several seasons for me on my electric cargo bike.
I've seen people zip tie their tires instead of getting studs.
Until you get a flat.
By people, I mean one person. I've seen one person who did that, and I don't know if it worked.
I've seen that. I've not personally tried it, but I've seen it. I mean, I'm into hacks. It's kind of fun to like not have to buy $90 a piece studded tires, certainly cheaper with zip ties. Probably not quite the same as far as stability, but better than nothing. I think the main thing is, rubber is definitely slippery on ice, but
if you were trying to cut costs with studded tires, a front studded tire is much more effective than no studded tires. So if you just had one in the front will help with the handling and traction. Because your weight is over the back, you tend to be more secure back there anyway. So a lot of people will say that one studded tire is sufficient if it's in the front. So if you were thinking this is a multi-year project of buying studded tires, because like Sarah said, they're kind of expensive, buy the front one first. And not that they're really different, but put it on the front first.
I don't know anything. If I just guessed though, I would have thought that having the studs where there's more weight would help more, because then you could really dig in, but I guess both kind of.
Steering gets real scary when you can't count on where you're.
Fair point.
So
yeah.
That's the point that's turning, but it does seem a little counterintuitive, but I think I would agree front tire if you're only going to do one.
Yes, I agree. And I was trying to find, there's a video guy out of Canada called Shifter, and he lives in Calgary and talks a lot about winter biking and talks about like what to wear. And also his assertion is that a front stud is enough. That's all he's ever used, is a front stud. Calgary, where they get much more snow than us, also does do a better job of clearing snow. And that's something that we struggle with, is clearing the snow. So I'm very excited to see how the Kearney Street Bike Path handles clearing of snow. I'll say that the park system does a really nice job, and I think the trails end up being pretty clear. The worst parts, in my experience, are the places that experience freeze thaw and have a lot of shadows, as Cindy said earlier, like the shadows sometimes throw you off. So Field Club Trail is one in particular that I've run into ice, or the South Omaha connector there. I've run into ice there because it's just so covered in trees that it just is shadier than every place else. And so it seems like a nice day in the spring, but it's still icy there.
And parts of it are like the lowest thing around. So when snow melts, it runs onto the trail and refreezes.
Yeah. Cindy had a great post about that off of the Keystone the other day, and the way that was coming off of the Nebraska Furniture Mart lot.
I really have a question about that. I just went by there today, and they are putting those like exactly next to the trail. From Sarah's shaking her head. So I may call somebody in parks and ask them about it, because they're definitely going to be on the trail. Just a little tiny breeze is going to put the water on the trail, plus the way the land lays in certain areas. So sorry, I was having some internet connection problems. Did I miss something?
Can you
Cool.
No.
repeat what you said is getting put right next to the trail? I missed the very first.
Sprinkler.
Oh,
Sprinkler
sprinklers.
system
Got it. Okay.
for Nebraska Furniture Mart. Yeah, they actually had some of their tubing on the trail this afternoon. So yeah. And so they had it running the other day, and there was ice on the trail. And so, I mean, they actually just, it's baffling.
What are they sprinkling? I mean, is there some grass patch that's there on the east side of the trail that I'm not thinking of?
There's green stuff. It's
Okay.
grass. I mean, you know, I'm sorry, but I'll start to get into waste of water issues.
That's right. So I threw a couple videos in the chat again, the two from Shifter that are interesting, and then Not Just Bikes also has a good video.
That's whiteboard. That too? Sure. Love it. Sweet. You bet. Whiteboard. Why not? Yeah, whiteboard. If you think so, all whiteboards. Introducing Idea Paint Clear. Transparent dry erase paint that lets you turn virtually anything you can imagine into a boundless whiteboard surface.
Can you mute for just a second? Okay, you got it.
Are you? Yeah.
Your YouTube ad started playing right away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. There's several videos that really do a good job of going through winter biking, and those are the three that I'm throwing in now. And one of them, so the first two from Shifter, again, the guy is from Calgary, and talks about biking in winter there, talking about layering and also the bike that he chooses to use. And he uses a bike that's aluminum and has a front studded tire and fenders. He talks about mud guards a lot. So things that we've already talked about. And then the other one is the Not Just Bikes, which is just mostly shaming places that aren't the Netherlands. Although in this case, he talks about Oslo and how they do a fantastic job of things that you wouldn't expect. For example, the decaling on the road is actually projected from a light above rather than being in the road surface, because it's going to be covered in ice and snow. So the idea that this is the bike lane is ephemeral if there's not snow or things on it. So they have, projected lights for the bike lane, and that really helps sort of identify the space in what otherwise could be just sort of a broad expanse. And they do a great job of plowing and making sure that the bikeways are clear. And that in itself is the indicating thing that shows why people bike as often as they do in the winter.
My favorite part of like when we get a big snowstorm and the crews haven't totally gotten all the lanes clear. This was particularly true when I used to live off of like 51st and Center and was commuting downtown. They only get like one full car lane, and then like they sort of plow the snow into a second lane. So you kind of almost have your own little bike lane. That's the best part, because otherwise, yeah, it's a little gnarly out there. Sometimes I even like change my route depending on the time of year. So that's something else to kind of just be aware of the first time it snows. If you have the luxury, well, maybe you work from home because now it's 2021, everything's weird, but maybe try out your route before you really need to rely on it if you're commuting, because sometimes, I mean, I guess just also in general, give yourself more time than you think you need, because being in a hurry in the snow is the least fun thing. That is when crashes happen. But yeah, check out your route, because it might not be quite as enjoyable once the snow flies, depending on how road maintenance and whatnot are done. Another thing, just I know earlier you said something about how Parks does a good job with trail maintenance and snow clearing and whatnot in the winter. I guess Parks and Public Works are teaming up this year to be taking care of some sidewalks, hopefully. So maybe clearing will be better. I guess they got enough complaints last year to like the mayor's hotline and whatnot about sidewalks that they're going to be taking that a little bit more seriously this year, which is good. Was also just wondering if anybody changes if they ride on the street or on the sidewalk. I always am still a ride in the street person, but in the sidewalks, curb cuts and whatnot are rarely cleared. So it's a different landscape when it snows. So give yourself time, scope out your route ahead of time. That's all, I guess.
Yeah, and I was particularly talking about through Elmwood where I use it, that I think that they did a really good job. But through Memorial Park, especially that like lower walking trail that's a little less of a wide path and more of a sidewalk, that one does not get plowed straight away. And you can see that there are lots of cyclists that go through there because you'll see tire tracks. And then that turns into rutted ice after a day or two. So there are some places where like the popularity of the trail, especially by cyclists, makes it almost worse because the cyclists will ride through it and it'll just become rutted trail. So there, like Sarah said, there are challenges in just making sure that if a trail doesn't work because it's completely unplowed or because there's some sort of obstacle, knowing sort of that next alternative, I think is really important so that you're not like caught out. And there are times that I get off the bike and push it, and that's part of winter cycling as well. And so if you can give yourself enough time so that you can get off occasionally to push, I think that's also important. Yeah.
So one thing I did, Due Space, their snow plow people were plowing not the sidewalk, but they were plowing the red bricks next to the street. And so it was incredibly dangerous. And so I basically went in and just talked to their operations person. And they actually, and plus their property manager, who is a fabulous person, and they actually had their guys come back out and they did the sidewalk. And so what actually happened was they actually cleared the sidewalk, but then left like a little ledge between the sidewalk and the street. So it actually felt safer once they came back and did that. So going to and from, you could use the sidewalk much more safely in the wintertime with your bike. So
I'll say
I
Oh,
was
sorry.
just saying that sometimes education and just talking to people sometimes really, really helps.
Yeah, I agree with that. Letting people know what is not working for you, especially if they're the property owner or the property manager. Especially if they call somebody, if they contracted somebody to do it and they did a bad job, then letting them know that that was a bad job. It's not like you're insulting them personally. You're just saying, hey, could you have this fixed? Yeah, I think that's a big plus if you can get there. I'm also very interested to see how the orbit stations that are supposedly self ice removing, they have heated pads. I'm interested to see how those work. It may just be an island oasis, then nothing around it is clear for miles, but this one little place is just soupy.
That's it. Yep. Which is delightful, like when you're right there, but it still doesn't do anything about getting to and fro.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm chiming in again, but because I live real close to Dodge Street, yeah, we have a picture. Actually, it's on the front of the walkability study of the 84th Street orbit station is totally blocked in by snow plows shoveling snow onto the sidewalk, and the station itself is totally clear. So the stations really do melt very, very nicely, unless a lot of slush and stuff from the street is being thrown back up on it, which is also a problem. Yeah, so it does work. But the to and froms, and like I said, again, I actually called up, it was Amigos. I called up Amigos and said, you know what, we can't even use the sidewalk here because you guys have totally blocked it. And then I also called the city.
As always, thank you for doing that because people need to do that. All right. Well, are there other winter cycling? Because then we'll talk about Thanksgiving and let Sarah talk mostly about that because I'm still trying to figure out what we're doing. But I'm excited for it. It's exciting.
This was like 4 topics ago, but I bought a pair of heated socks last winter and they changed my life. my toes always get so cold. And now when I charge my bike lights, I just charge my socks. It's a game changer. I highly recommend heated socks if you have toes that go numb and are very painful in the winter.
That's awesome. You came to one of our coffee chats in the snow with your heated socks, and for a long time, Scott referred to you as the heated socks girl. So he was impressed with them as well. They're electric. That's what he likes. But yeah, that's good to know. I feel like that was always a complaint that I got from folks. It's like, how do I keep my feet warm? So that's a fun one to know about.
So heated socks, I mean, that sounds like it would be a game changer. Do those neoprene shoe covers, do people find those helpful? I mean, I usually, if I ride when it's cold, I'm wearing usually some kind of insulated boot or shoe. So I've got that going on. But even when I'm not riding that far, my toes get cold too.
We used to sell a fair amount of them. And again, I think it comes down to like some insulation and then some just wind breaking. But it's so hard to, someone would come and be like, when it's 10 degrees out, what do I wear? And everyone's bodies are so different. It's impossible to say. So it's really just a matter of trial and error. But I've got some that I don't use, Lori, if you want to try them. That's the other thing we should do is like a gear swap. Like, I don't really use this anymore. Maybe you want to try it. I was telling Melinda the other day at the coffee chat, hey, if you want to borrow my bar mitts, let me know.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have gear to ride if it's 20 degrees or warmer and not super windy and dry. And it has to be dry. I don't think I'm gonna do the whole, going in the ice and snow, although I admire all of you who do.
To each their own. No such, no wrong answer. Ride when you do. That's perfect. But yeah, if you do want to borrow anything, feel free. I was just going through my old box of stuff I don't really use anymore. Derek and I were talking about how I should have done a bike swap at the shop before I sold it, which did. Anyway, okay, cool. I want to be, I guess, also just aware it's about 10 till 8. So anything else, Derek, you're going to say on?
Well, the last thing I was going to say is there's this culture around like big trucks being somehow manly. And I think what we need to do is really emphasize the idea of riding your bike in the snow and the sleet and when it's bad weather. Like that should be, manly is the wrong word. That's not the adjective that I want to get, but whatever the ethos of I got here in a big truck is, I want that to be the case for I rode even though it's freezing out, and even though it's snowing out, I still took my kid to school and came to work. And we need to flip the script on that, because that to me is more impressive. And so I appreciate people that have, frost in their face when they get to their destination.
Okay, perfect.
Badass is probably right. I like that much better than manly. Manly is a bad, dumb word, and I will not use that. So badass, except I will not use that with regard to trucks.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to bother you all about Cranksgiving really quickly, because that is the next event we have that is bikey and coming right up. It is on this Saturday, the 20th at 11 a.m. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt on your bike, and it's kind of a race, but it doesn't have to be. So the idea of Cranksgiving happens actually all over the country. We used to do a version of it when I had the shop, and we just kind of turned our coffee ride into that. We just rode Hy-Vee and bought a bunch of stuff and rode back. But this year, the way we're going to do it is have everybody meet at the Millwork Commons little park area by the Ashton at 11 if you want to be participating. And then we'll kind of go over the little lists of items that we're looking for. And we'll also have a list of different kind of grocery stores or little corner markets in the area that might have some of these items. So all you really need to do is show up with a working bike. Helmets are a good idea. And some sort of a bag, whether it's a backpack or panniers, whatever. There's really not too much else to it aside from we're going to have, again, just a list of the items that we want folks to go and gather. We're going to be donating what we collect to the Sienna Francis House and also Omaha Autonomous, who does homeless outreach. And so we're going to be bringing, I'll post the lists of the most requested items leading up to it too. So if you don't want to ride, but you still want to help donate some goodies, you are welcome to just show up by car, by foot, by bike, by bus, whatever, just get there and donate some canned goods. Or also, I know Omaha Autonomous is looking for sleeping bags as well. So, or warm winter coats, gloves, those sorts of things. So Derek and I are both going to have cargo hauling bicycles, and we'll just try to fill them up. And there will be prizes. We're just going to have mode shift t-shirts for the first one to get back with 5 goodies from 5 different locations. You have to keep your receipt and the goodie, you know, whether it's like a can of, I don't know, tuna fish, and a receipt to show that you actually did ride to all these different places. And the first one back gets a t-shirt. So it should be fun, just a way to, and it's supposed to be really nice on Saturday. So just a nice way to, you know, help your community and ride bikes. So we'll be there from 11 to 2. So if you want to swing by at any point between 11 and 2, we'll be in the area. And yes, North Omaha is a food desert. That's part of the point, is to showcase like how there's not really a lot right over there, but there are a handful of different options within about a 3-mile radius, more than I thought actually. So we'll have that list handy so that you aren't totally on your own with where to go.
It involves thinking that downtown Cubbies is a grocery store, which
Exactly.
it is.
Yeah. Yeah,
But,
I mean, for these purposes, you can find a roll of toilet paper probably at a lot of these, you know, gas stations or whatever too. So it'll just be kind of a fun, interesting way to spend a Saturday. So we hope to see you then. It's definitely, you know, free to participate, but cans of whatever, I don't know. It won't be a high price situation. So yeah, spread the word. Come on down.
yeah, and bring the cans from home if you have them extra. You don't have to buy them that day. We're just doing it as sort of an extra fun little scavenger hunt, go get thing.
Yeah. Oh, and I did share the Facebook event in the chat. So RSVP, bring a friend. Let me know if you have any questions. Oh, and then I can't not tell you about Giving Tuesday on November 30th, because we will be harassing all of you for your money. You know, it's our big year-end fundraiser. So that is happening on the 30th. So the 20th and the 30th, mark your calendars.
Yeah, I think that's all we've got. Thank you all, unless there's further questions, or we can, I think we're still hitting record, so we could stop hitting record and then we could do any complaining that needs to be done. But otherwise.
John had a question. John, did you raise your hand?
No, I was just signaling that, yeah, I'm happy with the evening. I didn't realize I could be seen, I guess. Sorry. It's a great amount of information we shared today. I appreciate that, especially Sarah, your comments about going platform. I mean, I just do that all the time. Then I can just ride my bike. I don't have to get all dressed up or anything. I just go. And one of the comments that I have struggled with warmth is I would like to buy a pair of gloves that fit, and that's really wrong. They got to be loose. And the same with shoes. Anything you pinch down too tight just is going to be freezing no matter what. So I keep it loose. Everything. Yeah, it's great. Good to see everybody.
Yeah, thank you all. Okay.